Welcome to another episode here at Deep Mountain Security. Today I kind of want to go over event logs and how those can be useful in auditing your security practices and among other things, as well as for troubleshooting or whatnot. So easiest way to get to event logs I find is generally through the control panel. So if we open up the control panel here, and you can type event, it should just be one of the first few things. You can also find it underneath administrative tools. You can open it from the command line. You can open it from a run prompt. Any way you look at it, you can get this up pretty easily. But anyways, so I just kind of wanted to go over basic usage and why Windows event logs are so useful. And a lot of companies, especially in secure environments, especially if you're doing PCI or other secure environments, you want to monitor your event logs. You want to port this information either to your SIEM or to another similar log collecting application. That could be Logstash or Splunk or anything similar to that. But I just kind of want to go over a couple things real quick. So you're going to notice that we've got a couple of drop downs here on the left hand side with some different things. Some of these are going to have stuff in them, some of them aren't, So administrative events, these are pretty much like, what's happening operating system wise. This isn't very in-depth stuff, name resolutions, device registrations, you plug a USB in or something like that, it might discover it. Drivers and how those are done. There's just, all kinds of different information here. How different Microsoft apps are behaving. Not a ton of really interesting stuff in here per se. But when you get down into Windows logs, and this is where you can find some more interesting stuff, application logs, these are, you're going to notice that you've got different kinds of logs here. So if we go back, we've got warnings, you've got errors, you've got information, and so you're going to see a couple of different things like this. And this will kind of help you classify and more easily go through some of your logs, So when you're looking at information, you're like, oh, this probably isn't that interesting. And it might not be something that you necessarily care about to an extent. And this is useful when you're filtering through just tons and tons of logs because especially if you turn on like performance monitoring and stuff like that, you're going to get a ton of logs and you're going to have to be able to know how to filter through it to find events that pop out, events that are going to be more interesting for us to explore and kind of drill down into. So, here's a warning in here or whatever. We've got some component failed or whatever, system couldn't find a path. Not too concerned about that. If we go down to our security log, and this is what I really want to get down into, you're going to notice that we've got a couple different event IDs here. We've got some different types of logs. So we've got audit successes, and there's a couple of other things, but they're probably not going to show up because I haven't done anything that trigger those events. But anyways, you're going to notice that every time someone logs on, it generates an event ID and a date and time and some other information associated with it here. If we go to the details of this event, you can actually notice that you've actually got XML data here, which makes it really easy to filter stuff through. You can look at it either way here, but essentially if we're looking at it right here, you're going to notice that we've got a user SID and a username and a domain name and a logon ID and a couple of other things here that keep popping up. So a lot of this can be really useful for drilling down into data. So you're going to notice that every logon is going to be associated with this 4624 event ID. So, you could use that to drill down into if you really wanted to. Then you've got special logon. This is a different kind of logon. So you can see that we're, it's using some different privileges here and it's just doing a couple of different things, so it might be interesting depending on what you're looking for and what exactly you want to log or make note of. There's a UAC box, most likely. So a local group's membership was enumerated. So, that was used. And there's a couple different things, an attempt was made to query the existence of a blank password for an account, Oh, that might be interesting, huh? There might be a couple of other things in here, if you kind of go through some of these. So you're going to find a bunch of random stuff in here. That's just going to be really useful. And so by going through some of these, you can, and it helps if you familiarize yourself with some of these different things. Kind of go through these, take a look at what's in there, and then you can, when you're reading about it, if you're confused by something like what does it mean when a security enabled group membership is enumerated, then take it to Google or Bing if you prefer that, or you can Google it with Bing, or however you want to do that. Maybe you want to look more into the event ID. It's pretty easy to just, go the event ID. Might be helpful if you looked at it. So Windows event ID 4799. And then this is going to bring up something. You probably want something, if possible, on Microsoft's TechNet website, so that if it's actually by Microsoft, then we're going to be able to pull a little bit more information off of that. That'll kind of help us drill down into it, so and this looks like it's more of a forum, but anyways, you can you Google it and you can go through event auditing and find all kinds of information about it that can be useful. A couple of other logs that we've got here. You've got a setup log. Most of these is going to be you can see that most of these are actually go back down. These are actually Windows updates here that are happening, and then there's a couple of other installed packages here and there that could be interesting, but maybe not necessarily something that we want to pay super attention to. And then we can go down into system, and this is going to have more system related stuff. So when Windows Update Client is running or performing updates, when the kernel is up, doing things, whether that be updating or something like that, and that might be an interesting thing to look into. What is your kernel doing? You're gonna notice that some of these look similar to administrative events, and that's kind of because administrative events being a custom view, it probably contains a lot of system logs, but not all system logs. So there's just tons and tons of stuff here. Forwarded events, you can actually receive events from other processes or whatever if you want to configure that, and that's a little bit more in depth. Then you're gonna have other things, and some of these might have stuff in them, some of them might not. But hardware events, those are going to be hardware-based stuff. Internet Explorer, you can actually choose to log stuff from Internet Explorer if you really wanted to. Maybe if you had a hardened environment where you're only using Internet Explorer to access specific web pages, then you could do a little bit more logging of events with Internet Explorer. And that's useful because Internet Explorer actually will accept group policies, so you can push out updates to every Internet Explorer in your network via Active Directory and group policy really fast, which is nice. Key management service, this is just like keys and stuff like that. Then you're going to notice there's just tons of stuff in here that you can enable and go through. PowerShell logs, you're going to notice that it's going to kind of go through all kinds of stuff related to PowerShell. And once again, if you're interested in monitoring PowerShell and what PowerShell's doing, then this is going to be a lot more interesting for you. However, if you're not super concerned into maybe what some of this data is, then you're not really going to worry about it as much. And so there's some other different things that you can do, just like tons of different stuff here. You're going to notice that there's just tons of things that you can drill down into and enable and just collect all kinds of data from all kinds of devices. But once again, one of the ones that I find most important or more interesting to monitor here is actually these security logs, because within these security logs, you're generally dealing with account permissions, user permissions, groups, and organizational units, and just all kinds of different permission requests and how permissions are being used and who's granted what permissions. Logon rights, user account management, stuff. So there's just tons of data in here, mostly relating to how security groups are managed, how permissions are allocated. So if you want to look for attempted logons into your environment, you can find those in here. If you're looking for intrusion attempts, you can find them. If you're looking for maybe privilege escalation, this would be a good place to look. And honestly, because this is just a Windows 10 machine and not an actual server 2016, that's a topic for another day. If you guys want that, let me know in the comments. But this is really useful for your Windows-based machines. Now, when you get into Windows Server environment, you're going to have a lot more logs that you can look for. Active Directory is actually going to log tons of data that you can go through, and that's just going to give you all kinds of stuff that'll be really useful to use in an environment where you're monitoring for this kind of traffic and this kind of data. So another couple of things that you can do in here. You're going to notice that this is a Windows MSC box. So it's a Microsoft Command Console. So we can do a couple of different things in here. There's ways to filter through the log. We can filter stuff. Let's say we want failed. Anytime. Any ID. We could specify specific ID, specific user, specific computers. What kind of it is. We could actually get into our XML and we could actually edit our query here and actually edit it in XML, which is kind of fun. But we can go through the different sources of events or whatever. Just tons and tons of stuff here. So we can, I don't know, there's just all kinds of stuff. So if we only wanted to see logon IDs, for example, we could go 4624 here and click OK, and then that's going to filter by only logon IDs. And you notice we're going to go down through here, and most of these are going to be successfully logged on because that's generally what's associated with this event ID. And you can just go on and on and on and on and on. Another thing to notice in here on these logon is you're going to have a logon type, and I'm not going to get super in depth into that right now, but you can Google it, and that can actually change. So like, for example, there's a logon type of 2, and then there's a 0, and then there's a 5. And so there's a couple different things, and these mean things, so when you find data like this and you're like, what does that mean? What is restricted admin mode? What is a virtual account or an elevated token or any other kinds of data associated in here? Because, there's just tons and tons of data in here, we could go on for days with just the amount of data that you can find in Windows event logs. But I just quickly wanted to give you guys an overview of what you can do, what you can find, and kind of show you how really useful this stuff is. Now, there's a lot of data in here, and it's going to require some sifting and some filtering and, some different search queries depending on how you do that, whether it's in the console or using an enterprise application like Splunk or Kibana to filter down through stuff. But anyways, I just kind of want to show you the amount of stuff you can collect in here, and there's really some neat stuff that you can do in here. So, it's already going through logon types right there even. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. I'm always trying to get the latest stuff, so I do value your input. Let me know in the comments below what you want for future videos. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching here at Deep Mountain Security.